this interview with us. I know it's kind of been a little bit of a struggle. So I'll start with the first 3 questions, which are like the introduction question. So first, like, what organization or group are you a part of?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am part of Learning for Equity, which is the educational arm of community health councils. And we basically provide different educational resources such as trainings, workshops that can help really develop an individual to be able to do different types of work that creates like systems and policy change or community engagement. And I'll stop talking there so you can ask your next question.
Okay, and so then we would like to know, like, how did you get to this point? Like, what was the journey to becoming a part of this organization?
Yeah, so I got involved with this organization fairly recently. So I just graduated from Loyola Marymount University, and through that, through my studies there, I was taking a course called Applied Community, and it was a sociology course. And basically, what that course did is they paired us with a local nonprofit, and we would do some work there for a few weeks and basically come back to the class and discuss the type of work we were doing, how the different things we've learned in all of our sociology classes apply, like what we're seeing, how different issues are like relevant, and like different strategies and like viewpoints are being represented. So through there, I kind of just started working a few hours a week at L4E. I kind of did some shadowing, kind of as an intern, but with just a few hours a week. And then slowly, I transitioned into a more, like an intern, but with a longer process. So I did a 10-week program with them. And now I am transitioning into a 1-year contract role as a registrar and project administrator. So I've just really had the opportunity to learn and see all the different type of work L4E is doing, and they've also given me the space to grow and learn alongside them. So very thankful.
And so then I guess my last question, I would just ask, what's your goal? Why do you want to do this work, and why are you involved with, this organization and also the one you just mentioned?
Yeah, so I think one thing that has been like very important to me, growing up has been mentorship. And I'm a first generation student, and a lot of things for me I've had to kind of explore on my own. And it's really challenging sometimes, like it can be very overwhelming. And I've really found that like through mentorship or even just really encouraging others to kind of push themselves and maybe give them pointers, they can really reach like some great potential. They can really reach their goals and what they want to do. And that I feel like mentorship, I've had so many great mentors in my life. And I think through that, I've always wanted to continue that work and get involved. And I think through L4E, I get to work on so many issues that like I'm very passionate about, but I can also do that in a way where I'm uplifting others, because we're providing these workshops and these trainings and these spaces for people to be able to reach their full potential. Because everyone has that inside of them. It's just a matter of them like recognizing it and maybe getting those resources that they need to get to that next level. So, yeah.
Why is it important for women to have access to feminine care?
Yeah, I think it's crucial for women to have access to feminine care because it is something that all women experience. I think it's something that it's just like it's just like a human right. And, it's not like you have the choice. So having access to feminine care is part of our health, being able to take care of ourselves, have the appropriate resources to take care of our hygiene. I think it's just really important for our health, our safety, and just like our mental well-being as well.
Question is, do you know what period poverty is? And if so, how would you define it?
Yes, I would define period poverty as the lack of access to resources regarding like menstrual care. So that can be, direct products, and even like spaces and like ability to, you know, like care for like when you're menstruating, and also just like education, like the knowledge on how to take care of yourself, like what are the best practices. I would say I would define that as period poverty.
Okay. Next question is, do you know any resources that provide help homeless women in need of feminine care products?
I would say a lot of the work I know revolves around nonprofit organizations. One that I can think of is one through my university. During my sophomore year, the presidents in charge of like the associate student body, they created a campaign to have access to menstrual products in all bathrooms on campus. And I still think that program is expanding, but they are available in, I would say, like maybe like 50% of the bathrooms on campus. And it's through a company, I believe, called Flow. I may be mistaken, but I know that a lot of these campaigns are like smaller campaigns that kind of aim to support this larger issue that's, you know, in the US and in California.
Hi, Judith. My first question is, what is the impact of bias in the healthcare industry that places women of color most at risk for living without proper access to women's health?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. I think bias is so prevalent in the healthcare industry. And I think, you know, it stems from, you know, I don't have a major background in health, but I have learned a little bit about these things. And I know it stems back to, you know, medical like racism, different studies that have occurred in the past that were just completely inappropriate and so wrong. You know, even thinking of like forced sterilizations and how, you know, that has impacted. But I think the lack of training and that still these like very antiquated like lessons and teachings about a woman of color, and even like thinking about kind of the training that a lot of like medical students receive, where they're only looking at diagrams with like white bodies, that can really affect kind of the thoughts that a lot of these you know, healthcare workers are receiving. And I think too, it really just affects it because a lot of people, a lot of like women of color will receive or will be gaslight when they have, when they say they experience different pain or when they're experiencing different symptoms, because, you know, some of these healthcare professionals don't know how to identify certain symptoms or certain, for example, like skin lesions. They don't know how to identify what those, what certain conditions look like on skin of color. So I think it's really important for there to be like trainings and just all around conversation of how to better serve these communities.
Thank you so much for your response. My second question is, does lack of education surrounding women's health in this community impact women's ability to take care of themselves?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question. When you say in this community, is that downtown LA or just the healthcare industry, to be more specific?
Downtown LA specifically.
Yeah, you know, I think back in like my experience, right? And I know it was very helpful always to have, like, I'm very privileged to have, you know, my mom who was able to kind of walk me through kind of the basics on how to, like, how to use a pad, you know, things like that. Have friends who also, like, you know, growing up, you talk about like, oh, how do you, I don't know, use a tamp, things like that. Not everybody has that. So I think there is, in certain situations, in certain circumstances. But with that being said, I also think, for example, nobody is going to know how to best like care for yourself, like when you're menstruating, besides like someone who is menstruating. So for example, we can't, like a man can't tell us, you know, how to best take care of ourselves unless they've thoroughly studied it. Maybe they're a doctor or a professional, but I would be very like wary about that. But I think, like relating back to our topic, I think there can be a lot of lack of education surrounding how homeless women, for example, can take care of themselves in the situations and in the spaces that they're in, just because every situation is different. So I think like just having those thoughts in mind, that every situation will be different. So there's not just one complete like resolution to everything.
Thank you for your response. My final question is, how does society's stigma of menstrual cycles prevent adequate response to solve this issue?
I think that's a great question. I think one of the largest, like, I would say stigma surrounding this issue is kind of like this conversation that, you know, when somebody is menstruating, they are like emotional, or they cannot handle things, or because of that, you know, they make like irrational decision. I think these thoughts are like very antiquated and very like what is the word? They're very problematic, because I think they've been very focused, and they stem a lot from like this male perspective. And I think we need to remember that like menstruating is something natural, and it's literally a part of our like, it's just a part of our lives. Like sweating, for example, is not stigmatized. Like that's just a normal thing. And I think we need to remember that in order to really be able to respond to this, and, you know, not hide these conversations, not hide products, and make people feel comfortable. You know, if someone, for example, bleeds through, you know, being able to respond to that appropriately and not make someone feel uncomfortable or shamed for it. So I do think it prevents, because people are afraid to talk about it. And I would just say, you know, really creating knowledge and awareness on the issue can help, you know, slowly start to help address the problem.
Beyond just physical health, how does having to cope with limited access to feminine products influence these women's mental and emotional health?
Yeah, I think beyond just physical health, I think having limited access to feminine products can be very detrimental, because I think when you know that, you know, you are undergoing these symptoms, you know, or I just think like, I'm thinking completely like, you know, having like premenstrual symptoms, all of that, and even when you're menstruating, for example, our topic is, you know, homeless women and lack of access to feminine products, menstrual products. And I think like, I will never know, I will not understand, I cannot speak on behalf of like a homeless woman, but I can just, you know, imagine like in my experience, you know, if you do not have access to these products that help you, you know, can do your day-to-day activities, if you don't have access to, for example, like professional care, if you need it, if, you know, your cramps are bad, if you're having very extreme symptoms, if you don't have access to medication, if that's what you need, if you don't have access to the simple like tampons, pads, menstrual products, it can be very difficult to go about like your day-to-day. And I can just think about like how having the lack of access to like a clean bathroom, a clean space with like water, to, you know, just care for yourself, care for your hygiene as well, that can just really create an unneeded stress on women. And I think, you know, it can really deter just on like your day-to-day activities. It's an added stress. And if you're not feeling well, if that's something that you experience, it just really complicates and worsens the situation. So I think it's really important to keep those things in mind.
Yeah. So thank you. That was our last question. We want to ask you also, like, do you have anything else to add on this topic? Or I say, you know, about, you know, period poverty and like, you know, especially among homeless women.
Yeah, I think one thing that I was thinking about kind of in preparation for this interview, I think it's really important to think about. I think it can be overwhelming sometimes to think about kind of solving an issue, right? Because you think like there are so many people involved, but I think it's really important to think about like the little things, what can you do that will start supporting this? Like what is measurable, what is sustainable as well. And I was just thinking like, even starting something small where, I think policy would be such a big supportive thing in helping support this problem here in Los Angeles, some policy where more funding is allocated to like LA parks for them to, upkeep their restrooms, or for example, provide menstrual products for free in them, or to support like medical facilities and making sure that they have access to provide this widespread, these menstrual products. I think that is just like, that would be such a great thing, providing that care. But that's like such a larger issue. So I was kind of thinking like, it's great when, individuals or nonprofits are able to kind of start addressing this, and they'll like sponsor, for example, a bathroom or a public place, and they'll kind of like community pantries or kind of those like community closets where people will put products in there. I think those campaigns as well are so amazing because it's very like mutual, and the community can support the local community. And even though it's a small action, it's still making a big difference because you can provide things there that people will directly need and they can restock. And it's something small, but you can, see what's in there. So that's kind of just one thing I was thinking about. Like, there are so many widespread, larger ways to solve this, but there are also really small, great initiatives that can be taken in place to kind of work to that larger way of action.